happy and good fun, with a love for sports and a bright future ahead of him. On December 8, 2000, Trevor disappeared without a trace, and his family are still searching for answers. So, it was a Thursday night in Dublin, Ireland. 22-year-old Trevor had been out to a Christmas work party. Afterwards, he stopped by his workplace. By that time, it was getting late, at about 3:30 a.m. He talked to a man at the gate before entering the building. Inside, Trevor logged into his computer, had a coffee with a colleague, then left. He is caught on CCTV around 4 a.m. walking on a main road towards home, and that is the last time he is seen. Also on camera is a man wearing black who comes into view moments later, going in the same direction as Trevor as if following him. This man remains unidentified and possibly had something to do with his disappearance. Now let's go back a few years so we can paint a picture of Trevor's life. Trevor was born in 1978 to Michael and Anne Deely, who had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Trevor was the youngest. He was a soft-spoken, easygoing kid. His best friend since high school was Glenn Cullen, who said they did everything together and never even had an argument. Trevor's siblings were athletic, but he especially excelled at science and maths. While in school, Trevor was not sure what he wanted to do. He enrolled in a business course at college, which he didn't like and dropped out in the second year. Trevor's sister, Michelle, suggested a computing course in Dublin, so Trevor signed up and enjoyed it. He had found his calling. By 1999, Trevor had completed the course and received several job offers. His father advised him that banking was always a safe option, so Trevor started working in the IT department of Bank of Ireland Asset Management. They were in the city's commercial centre, and the IT team consisted of about 10 staff members working in an open plan office. Colleagues say Trevor was personable, helpful, and customers loved dealing with him. Thursday night was the usual night to go out, drink, and socialise together. Trevor soon got his own apartment in a very nice area on Serpentine Avenue, which he shared with 2 flatmates, Sarah and Neve. In October 2000, Trevor and his brother Mark, who was 7 years his senior, went to watch a football match with some other friends. That's the last time Mark saw Trevor. In November 2000, 1 month before his disappearance, Trevor took a few weeks off work to travel to Alaska in the US. He had met a girl named Karen in Dublin that summer and wanted to go visit her. Trevor was able to get a free ticket from his best friend Glenn, who was working as a flight attendant for Aer the chance to meet Karen. His father, however, said that Trevor actually met a couple of college girls in Dublin that were visiting from Alaska, studying at Anchorage University. He sent emails to one of them, Janie, saying he was coming over, but the girl replied she was busy with exams. Nevertheless, Trevor persisted and said he was going. Upon returning from Alaska, he stopped by his parents' house in Naas, which is about a 1-hour drive from Dublin. His father, who was leaving for work, saw him briefly, and Trevor told him it was a great trip. In a bit of a rush, his father said they'd talk about it more at Christmas, which unfortunately would never happen. This was on Tuesday, 2 days before Trevor's disappearance, and the last time Trevor was seen by his parents and sister Pamela. In a 2021 interview, Pamela said he was lying on the couch, tired with jet lag from the trip. Then we had dinner. Mum made steak to give him energy after coming back, and he told me he was meeting his friends from Naas. I drove him down. He got out of the car, said goodbye, walked up through the CBS car park. That's the last time I ever saw him. His silhouette is so clear in my mind. After a few hours, Trevor headed back to Dublin, as he was due to work the next day. According to best friend Glenn and another friend, Conleth, the three of them had planned to meet up for drinks that weekend on December 9th, the day after Trevor disappeared. When Trevor didn't show up, the pair didn't think anything of it and said that it happens sometimes. It's not clear whether either of them tried to contact Trevor. The staff Christmas party was scheduled for Thursday, December 7th. Trevor phoned his father that evening from his apartment to say there was no electricity. He then phoned back again to say he spoke to the energy company and got the electricity fixed. This indicates that Trevor returned to his apartment after work before going back out. Before the work party, some people, including Trevor, went to the nightclub Copper Face Jack's first. Trevor's father says that his final conversation with Trevor was on the phone when he was in Copperface Jack's. They left there at about 8:45 p.m. Then everyone gathered at the Hilton Hotel for a meal where they had a band playing. Coincidentally, Trevor's sister Michelle was also having a Christmas party in London that same night. She had not seen her brother since Easter. Back in their hometown of Naas, friends Glenn and Conleth were on a night out as well. At around 11:30 p.m, Trevor had called Glenn, but it was too noisy to hear what Trevor was saying, so Glenn said he'd call back. When Trevor called again, Glenn missed it. After the party at Hilton Hotel at around 2 a.m, a number of people, including Trevor, then went to Buck Whaley's nightclub. That evening there was heavy rain and strong winds. Trevor didn't have an umbrella for his walk home, so after leaving the nightclub, he stopped by the office on his way, probably just to get an umbrella. A colleague, Carl Penn, person there working the night shift. He described Trevor was drowned wet from the rain. Carl said, "I was surprised to see anyone. The last thing you expect is to see someone calling into the office after a Christmas party. When he came in, he asked me, did I have time for a cup of tea? I said, yeah, sure. I just had something to do at that moment, and Trevor said, grand, I just need to log on for a minute." While Carl finished his task, Trevor logged on to his computer at a nearby desk. Carl wasn't sure if he was doing something to do with work or sending an email. We don't know what Trevor did on his computer, but the police advised it was nothing of significance. Also in Ireland, the authorities are called the Gardaí, but to make things easier for me, I'm just going to call them the police. So, his computer was checked, and nothing suspicious was found, according to the police. After 10 minutes or so, Trevor and Carl went to the office canteen. Trevor had a coffee, Carl had tea. Trevor had drank a little, but Carl recalled, "I would not consider him as drunk. I'd seen him worse on other nights." Carl said Trevor was in good spirits. They chatted about the party, and then Carl got back to work. Trevor collected a company umbrella that was lying around, said goodbye to Carl, and then left the building around 4 a.m. Back in Nace, best friend Glenn was now asleep. Normally, he kept his phone by his bed, but that night his phone was charging downstairs in the kitchen. He slept through the sound of his phone ringing downstairs. "I had never ever left it downstairs on charge before," Glenn said regretfully. The next morning, he saw the missed call from Trevor and a voicemail which said, "Hi Glenn, I've missed you there. Just on my way home. All going good. I'll talk to you tomorrow." Or words to that close effect. Glenn thought nothing of it, and the message was deleted. He said if they had both been out, it was pretty normal that they might call each other afterwards. Police reported the last activity on Trevor's phone was at 4:06 a.m, around the time of this phone call. They never asked Glenn for his Nokia to retrieve the voicemail, as from what Glenn had told them, they didn't believe it to be relevant. Some say the police should have done their due diligence and got the voicemail because it was still evidence, even if it ended up not being of any use. In the minutes after the call, Trevor walked along the Grand Canal holding the umbrella as the rain continued to fall. He had no known contact with another person after this point. There was also no taxis that night due to a taxi strike. But this wouldn't have bothered Trevor too much, as it would only be about a 20-minute walk from his workplace to his apartment. However, investigators noted that they would often contact taxi drivers for information and possible witness statements in the early hours when no one else would be around. On the morning of Friday, December 8th, Trevor did not turn up for work. His boss said he let it slide due to the previous late night, but he did admit that it was very unusual for Trevor, as as he was never late for work. Over the weekend, several people tried to call Trevor, but the only person that remembers is his sister Michelle. Michelle called his mobile probably 4 times without knowing he was missing. She says his phone rang, but can't be sure. If it did ring, this means it was not submerged in water when she called. At some point later, the phone went dead. Michelle believes the police could have done more at the time, possibly pinpointing its location via the network, which was definitely an option even back in 2000. Only on Monday, the 11th, did the manager establish that nobody had spoken to Trevor over the weekend. They began to worry, so called Trevor's mother Anne, who asked her husband to go check Trevor's apartment. She also contacted Trevor's friends, but none of them had heard from Trevor since Thursday. No one answered the door at Trevor's flat, as the other 2 flatmates were away on holiday. Trevor was then reported missing that day. On Tuesday, the day after Trevor was reported missing, the River Dodder was searched by a diving team, but nothing was found. It's a shallow river, and clarity was similar to a swimming pool, so this is fairly conclusive. The Grand Canal and Grand Canal Basin was also searched, but nothing found. The basin is slightly less conclusive, as it's not possible to drain since the buildings around it would collapse, but police are certain he is not in there. Also on Tuesday, President Clinton visited Dublin, and so before his arrival, the entire area was swept clean by US Secret Services. It's possible that some important evidence was picked up and discarded that weekend, prior to Trevor being reported missing. Once a timeline was put together, everyone realized they had lost 4 days of searching from the last sighting of Trevor. Trevor's large circle of friends, family, colleagues, and his father's colleagues organized themselves into groups and were out searching every day from 7 a.m. to midnight. They distributed thousands of posters and leaflets, went house to house, into clubs, pubs, restaurants, spoke to homeless people. They calculated every possible route Trevor could have taken. It seems the police could not keep up with them. One detective said they'd never worked with such a proactive family before. 2 officers traveled to Alaska to interview the girl he met. Apparently, Trevor had just appeared out of nowhere, and it was rather difficult. He was not invited out. But there were no leads from this. On a separate trip, Trevor's sisters, Michelle and Pamela, also flew over to talk to her. In 2000, there was less CCTV cameras than today, but there was one outside the Bank of Ireland's office on the corner of Bagot Street and Haddington Road. Trevor's friend, Conleth, worked at the time for a company that supplied CCTV equipment. Conleth said, back then, all the CCTV footage was recorded on VHS video. He knew that companies either stored their tapes for a short period of time or wiped them out and re-recorded over. Conleth and other friends made sure to go into each of the premises along any of the possible routes of Trevor's walk home from his office and ask organisations to check their footage. The Bank of Ireland at Bagot Street Bridge was the only premises that had footage of Trevor that night. Conleth recalls the manager telling him that it would have been wiped out quite soon. The bank at the time worked on a 28-day cycle, which was almost up. Conleth says, "I'll never forget the bank manager saying we were lucky we called in at the time, and that she wouldn't release the footage to us, but she would keep it for the police once they made contact with her." Trevor's sister Michelle says, "We looked for all the CCTV footage. It was his friends rather than the police who found that." The police defended themselves, saying that they would have found the footage eventually and that someone was probably on the way to do that job. From 3:04 a.m., CCTV shows an unidentified man waiting outside the office front gate for approximately half an hour before Trevor's arrival. The man gets a phone call at 3:33 a.m. Trevor arrives just 1 minute later at 3:34. It is speculated that someone was informing him that Trevor would arrive soon. It doesn't seem like Trevor recognized this man, and it looks like Trevor is on the phone as he walks past. In the first shot, Trevor walks past the man, who follows about 15 seconds later. However, from the second camera at the back gate, the man arrives there almost 20 seconds before Trevor. So Trevor probably stopped for about 30 seconds out of shot to finish his phone call. The man is at the back gate, and as Trevor goes to open it, they have a brief conversation. Trevor then enters through the gate, which is unchained. A few minutes beforehand, Peter, the security guard, had taken the chains off the gate for delivery of internal post. Trevor thanked Peter for letting him in. 2 minutes later, footage shows this rather unsettling image. The man who spoke to Trevor is standing outside the back gate with another man and a third Trevor walking on Haddington Road 10 minutes later at 4:14 a.m. A man is seen following behind by about 30 seconds. It is speculated to be the same man seen in the previous shots, but others think this man has a different build. It's of course a possibility this guy is completely unrelated to the case, but the fact is that he remains unidentified. After this, the next passers-by was a young woman 30 seconds after the man, and then a couple 1 minute later after the woman. The couple were identified, but say they do not remember Trevor or anything untoward. The woman has not been identified. Some people who are familiar with the area have questioned why Trevor was walking down Haddington Road, as that was not a direct route to his apartment. One explanation was that he was heading to a 24-hour spa to get cigarettes, as he was seen earlier in the evening withdrawing £60 from an ATM, and we know that he was a smoker. If that's the case, then perhaps the shop would also have seen Trevor on CCTV if he had made it there. Perhaps he just decided to take a different route home, or he was heading for somewhere else, although it's hard to imagine where, as he was meant to be back in the office at 9 a.m. More and more theories have emerged over the last 20 years. Family and friends are certain this was not a suicide. Investigators have ruled out accidents such as falling into the river or getting hit by a drunk driver. Any of these situations would have led to evidence being left behind. One theory says this was a mugging gone wrong, either by the man that was following him or by someone Trevor encountered later. He could have been lured into a vehicle, maybe offered a lift home. At over 6 feet, Trevor may have put up a struggle, was then killed, and his body hidden somewhere obscure. The main theory among police is that this was a gang-related crime, and Trevor was killed by a known criminal involved in drugs, prostitution, and other illegal activities. The gang were known to have been active in the area of South Inner City Dublin, where Trevor was last seen alive. They believe Trevor may have come across 1 or 2 members of the gang on his walk home, perhaps seeing something he shouldn't have. Investigators think it could be more of a spur of the moment crime rather than a planned attack. However, that does not explain the man in black, who many believe was involved somehow. 18 months before Trevor disappeared, a young woman, Sinead Kelly, who was involved in prostitution, was found stabbed to death on the Grand Canal near Trevor's last sighting. Her murder remains unsolved, but the police suspects the same gang. In 2017, after receiving new information to back this theory, the police did a search and excavation across 3 acres of land in Chapelizod, about 5 new information they received which led them to this search, but other reports say the tip was received by an undercover officer in which a gang member confessed to accidentally murdering Trevor after bringing him to a house in an attempt to intimidate him, although it's not mentioned what for. The gang member put a gun to his head, which accidentally went off. This is now thought to be a false confession, since Trevor was not found at the given location. Another theory focuses on the fact that we don't know whether Trevor actually arrived home that night, and officials do not report on what state Trevor's apartment was in when it was searched, or whether there were any sightings of suspicious individuals waiting for him there. It's not known whether police did any DNA or forensic testing. Also, the investigators said they checked Trevor's computer, but back then, testing would not have been as thorough as it is today. Not to mention, Trevor was an IT expert, so if he did want to hide something, it probably wasn't found. The theory is that there were multiple men involved, and this was a planned attack. When he spoke to the man at the gate, maybe Trevor became anxious, so stayed in the office for half an hour, waiting for the man to leave. He was followed, and there were more people waiting at his flat, who may have been responsible for the power outage earlier as well. They abducted Trevor, questioned him, then got violent. It may have been accidental. Then they disposed of Trevor somewhere he would never be found. It's not clear what they would want from him or accuse him of. Perhaps they thought Trevor could somehow get them money from the bank, or maybe it was something else Trevor was involved in. This theory assumes a lot of things, but we can't rule it out. The man in black, seen talking to Trevor and walking behind him, whether they are the same person or two different guys, remains persons of interest to the police. Given the amount of publicity the case has had, surely this person knows they are wanted for questioning. And if they were completely innocent, they'd have no problem coming forward. Police know that people were on the canal and in that general area on the 7th and 8th of December who have declined to speak to the investigation team. They are appealing for these people to come forward, and Crime Stoppers have pledged an award of 100,000 euros for information which significantly assists the investigation into Trevor's disappearance. In conclusion, there are so many ifs and maybes in Trevor's case that there is not one theory that stands out above the others. Today, Trevor would be 43 years old. Unless new evidence or new witnesses come forward with information, his disappearance will remain a mystery. The Deely family still has hope in finding answers, and their most recent appeal for information was just a few months ago in 2021. There is also a petition for the authorities